What's going on, people? Welcome to my brand new YouTube channel, FPL of the Day. I am Jay London, and in this video, this one right here, we are discussing the 10 biggest mistakes that you could make going into the brand new FPL 2021-22 season. If you are an experienced player, then this is also going to be good for you because you can refresh your brain, you can remind yourself on some of the no-nos going into the new season. And if you are a new player, then this is going to be perfect for you because you can learn from our mistakes and make sure you're not doing the same thing. Before we dive in, please subscribe. This is a brand new YouTube page, so if you're discovering this video, I need all the help that I can get to climb up the ranks and climb up the searches. Give it a little like once you've done that as well. Let's get in 10 things that you 100% need to avoid. So there's no real correct way of playing FPL. There's no mantra, but there is 100% a lot of mistakes that you can make along the season. So we're going to go through 10 of them, 10 things that you need to 100% avoid at all costs going into the brand new season. And we're going to start with one of my favorites. Too many hits. So again, there's no real rule on how many hits you should take to fix your team. Sometimes you're going to need to do it, and you'd be very silly to go into a season saying, I'm not taking any hits this season. The reality is, at some point, you're going to need to. But what you don't want to be doing is taking a -4, a -8, a -12, a -16, and reducing the amount of points in your team, because literally, logically, you can see that that's not going to work. You're taking out points while you're gaining points, which means you're just going to stay where you are and you're not moving up the ranks. There are going to be times that you do need to take a hit, but please do make sure that you're not doing it just spontaneously or as a punt. You're looking across the season, the game's coming up, and you've identified that this is going to be something that benefits my team in the next maybe 3, 4, or 5 game weeks, not just for one. Blowing your chips early. So this is a common mistake for a lot of new players. They don't realize how long the season actually is and how important these chips are. If you have no idea what FPL chips are, then check out the video that we did last. You can find a link in the description down below. I'll link it up there as well. But the reality is you only get 4 of these. So if you're using them in game week 1, 2, 3, and 4, you're going to be pretty screwed for the rest of the season. You want to be saving these for when you need an emergency, when you want to gain ground on people. If there's a double game week or a blank game week, or you might see some really good fixtures develop along the season, these chips are going to be key to your season. So don't be blowing them early. Again, disclaimer, some people do, and sometimes it does work out, but likelihood is it won't. Chasing differentials. Differentials. Chasing players that nobody else have, low ownership players. This is something that we've seen quite a lot. There's a myth that you need to have players 100% that are like 0.1% owned, which can help if you get it right. But likelihood is, if you're chasing these players throughout the season, you're going to have a really hard time. Example, Raheem Sterling might score a hat-trick and he might be in your team. You might then decide, I'm going to take this person out and put in a player that no one else has. Maybe it's Sarr from Watford, and put that player in and just think, oh yeah, he might score a hat-trick next game week. Reality is, he probably won't, which is going to leave you pretty screwed if you do take out Sterling and everyone else has kept in, and then Sterling gets the points again, and then you're left with Sarr in your team. So just be very careful. It is nice to have a player that nobody else owns, but just look at it very closely and make sure that you're making the right decisions when you are picking a different player, if you are going to do that. My favorite word in FPL, knee-jerking. What it means is jumping on a player that did really well in the last game and probably won't do well in the games upcoming. So he might have had a bad season. You might be halfway through the season. He's played one game and he scored a hat-trick. So everybody has rushed to put him in. That means you're knee-jerking, and that is something that you really need to avoid. Example, last season, Chris Wood did it. I think he had about a game where he scored like 4 goals, for example. He was quiet the whole season. Vidra was another one, and everybody jumped on them. And then for the rest of the season, they were pretty quiet. So that's what you don't want to be doing. Do not jump on a player just because of one single performance. Obviously, you want to be keeping an eye on players throughout the season and seeing how they develop, if they come into form, etc, etc. But don't just jump on the player because they've had one good game. That's a very bad move. Next up is overthinking, one that I am probably the most guilty of. And if you've been playing FPL for a long time or many seasons, you will agree with me 100%. You can decide on a player on a Monday and say, this is going to be a person that I'm going to put in. By Friday, you have talked yourself out of the decision because you've been speaking to other people, you've been watching videos, you've been seeing stuff on Twitter, and then that player goes on, has a worldie of a game week, all right? So just make sure that, I don't know, maybe a good way to do it is to write down the reasons why you want to put that player in at the beginning of the season, and then later on, when it comes to Friday, when it comes to making those transfers, then you can actually have a look back at that list and say, oh, do you know what? These are the reasons why. Another thing is try not to pay too much attention to what other people are saying. Everybody wants everybody else's team to look like their team. So if you put in your teams on Twitter or you're speaking to some of your friends who are not inside your mini league, because if they are in your mini league, what are you doing? Just try not to get clouded and judged. If you have decided on a player and you have a good reason for it, chances are there's a good reason for it. Making early transfers. So there is an advantage of doing this because players' prices do increase 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Sometimes it does go up. So if there is a player that you have identified at the start of the week that you really, really want to get in and you're really tight for cash, then that's a good time to be making an early transfer. If that's not the case, you want to be waiting until Friday, until the deadline, maybe a couple of hours before you make that transfer. Just make sure you don't forget. Set an alarm or something. That way, you're going to get to see conferences, you're going to get to see team news, you're going to get to see players' injuries. I mean, it will be a nightmare if you put a player in and then that player gets injured. It happens all the time. So again, it's not a sin, but you want to be waiting until very close to the deadline before you're making transfers, because making early transfers can end up very, very bad. Emotional decisions. We've all been there. We've watched a game. We've seen a player get about 3, 4, 5 chances that they should have scored. We get angry with them. We get fed up and then we take them out. We make decisions when we're angry. Do not make decisions when you're angry. Make sure you're keeping a calm head, and when you are transferring players out, you're looking at the upcoming fixtures. Okay, cool. Maybe somebody did miss about 3, 4 or 5 chances, but then that means that they're getting chances. And if they're playing some of the worst defenses leading up, then you might want to be reconsidering taking that player out. Yes, it can be annoying, but do not make emotional decisions. Staying loyal to your team. So you might be a real diehard Everton fan and decide that you're never putting in any Liverpool players because they are your rivals. Or maybe you support Man United and you decided that Kevin De Bruyne is no good for your FPL team. Big mistake. You really need to be separating the fantasy world from the real world, and actually you can't have any loyalties, not when you're playing FPL. You need to be putting in the best players despite what team they play for. On the flip side, you don't want to be putting in players and just favoriting players just because you support that team. One of my friends who I play a mini league with will captain Harry Kane every single week because he's a huge Tottenham fan. This is only going to end in disaster, all right? So just make sure that you're separating FPL from the real world, because you cannot have any loyalties when it comes to fantasy football. This leads me on to my next point very, very nicely. FPL players versus real life players. Example, N'Golo Kante is one of the best, if not the best, defensive midfielder in the world. Is he good for FPL? No. You need to be identifying the players that are going to get you all the points in fantasy football by checking out the rules, and check out the first video that I done. Again, link in the description down below, to be making sure you are maximizing points. Defensive midfielders are not the place to go. Maximum you're going to get from them is about 3 points, maybe 1 point for a clean sheet, or you might get a one-off where they've done really, really well and they've assisted a goal or something like that. They're not going to be a high ceiling. They're not going to be in positions to be scoring goals, and they're not getting a lot of points for clean sheets. So N'Golo Kante, as good as he is in the real life, for FPL life, it's a no. And last but not least is a nice one to end with. Do not give up. You can do this. We've all got those players. They join our mini league. They play from game weeks like 1 to 6, and then that's it. They are done. They've not even used all their chips. Reality is, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You could use your triple captain and that player that you captain could score 5 goals. Sounds unlikely, but it's happened. Stranger things have happened before, right? So do not give up. Whatever you do, persist and persevere throughout the whole season. You'll learn a few things and then you'll come back stronger for the next one. After all, it's just a bit of fun, and doing it week in, week out will make the game a lot more entertaining. So there you go, 10 things that you 100% need to avoid going into the brand new FPL 2021-22 fantasy season. If you are a new player, then this is going to be perfect for you. Learn from us. Do not make the same mistakes that we did. And if you are an experienced player, then maybe these are just 10 things that you need to remind yourself and refresh yourself with before going into the new season. Little bonus one for you, subscribe to FPL of the day. Yep, cheeky little plug there. I'm going to be doing videos throughout the whole season, so please do give me your support. This is a brand new channel and I need all the help that I can get. Leave a comment, let me know what you want to see on the next video, give it a little like, and I'll see you then.